Welcome everyone to the Clueless About Milestones and Metrics for Hardware Startups. My name is Anna. I'm the head of research at First Momentum Ventures and your host for the evening. So before we jump to the point and introduce the panelists, I would actually like to ask you for an input. So I'm just going to share my screen. This one. Where you can scan the QR code or go to menti.com and then kind of use these numbers 624526 to answer the question. And let's build a kind of word cloud about what's your role in the startup ecosystem. Are you a founder? Are you an investor? Are you a wannabe? Like, who are you? Let's get to know our audience tonight. So in the meantime, I'm just going to continue with my script. So basically, throughout the duration of the event, you can always jump back to Menti, and ask the questions. So if you are on your phone, you can just scroll down, and there is like kind of open Q&A where you can post your questions or upvote those that are already there and you would like them answered. So we will tackle those first during the Q&A session, which is then the second part of the event. So back to intros. As I mentioned, my name is Anna. I'm really pleased to see all of your faces here this evening. So thank you for joining us. I'm here on behalf of the First Momentum Ventures. So I hope that this is not inverted, new merge. So we are an early stage VC firm that invests predominantly in software as a service, industrial tech, and deep tech topics, touching hardware quite a lot. And due to our early stage deep tech startup affinity, we have been particularly curious about university and research spin-offs. So this is why we have created and are fostering the network for scientist founders called Clueless No More. So if you're not familiar with it, by some miracle so far, although it exists for almost a year and it has almost 130 members already, and you happen to be a scientist founder, so I have posted in the chat here the link, so feel free to visit the landing page and sign up. So this Clueless About panel is a series of events, and it is a part of what we offer within the network. So this session is recorded and the video will be available to the members of the network. So together as well with the previous iterations that we had. So this evening is all about learning about what would VCs look for when evaluating deep tech hardware building startups, why those milestones and metrics particular, and how to be better prepared as a founder for your VC discussions. So to help out with that topic, I have assembled an amazing panel of two people. So, and I can't wait to pick their brains on the topic. So these are the two investors with great track record in hardware tech space in Germany, Europe, and beyond. So we are talking today with my colleague Max from First Momentum and with my friend Christian from Planet A. So guys, I would like you to introduce yourselves briefly, your background, as both of you are scientists as well. What type of hardware tech are you looking into, are excited about? And of course, a few sentences about your fund. I would start with Max, since he's more covering the pre-seed and seed stage, and it's also his birthday today. So let's put a limelight on Max.
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Max. As Anna said, also a scientist by education. I'm actually a physicist. I have a PhD in physics and worked at the intersection of nanotech and optics. Spent most of my time actually researching on nanoscale antennas and light sources and molecular machines. In the end, it was a bit more basic research actually, and not so much applied. So I kind of left science. Met some crazy people, and then we co-founded a startup, very much Hyperloop inspired. The company actually still exists, but I opted out at the end of 2022, and it kind of pulled me to the other side of the force, directly to First Momentum. And yeah, here, as Anna mentioned, and also very much fitting to the topic today, I'm looking at a lot of very technical, hardware heavy startups from lots of different areas. For example, semiconductors, compute, energy related, space tech. So there's really like quite a broad spectrum here. And as Anna mentioned, only focus on pre-seed, seed, so very early stage.
Thanks, Max. I actually realized that we haven't pinned, so I'm going to stop the share. So the screen is going to change. Yeah, Chris, please introduce yourself.
Yes, hello everyone, and Anna, thanks for organizing this and for inviting me. And just very quickly, I'll mention who Planet 8 is in case you guys don't know. I'm sure you know First Momentum already. So Planet 8, we're an impact fund. We're based in Berlin, and we're generalists in the impact space. So we look across verticals, meaning heat and energy, waste, water, mobility, and so on. We're early stage, but we go from pre-seed all the way to Series A. So I joined Planet A a little bit over a year ago, and I also trained as a chemist, well, as a scientist. So I'm actually chemist by training. That was my undergrad and part of my graduate education. And then I ended up getting a PhD in the Department of Biology at MIT. So I was also, well, Anna was also at MIT. So we share that. And after that, I was a postdoctoral associate at Columbia University. And then I spent the next 7 years working commercializing innovation, tech transfer, and so on, before going to business school and pivoting my career towards VC. So I was also in the UK for this. So I've seen quite a lot of the ecosystems in the UK and also in the US. And at Planet A, I'm focusing mostly in the spaces of manufacturing, so industrial tech, industrial biotech as well, chemicals, also looking into food tech, and also construction, like new materials. We don't shy away from the hardware. We have been looking extensively into hardware, so we know the pain and we know the challenges, and it'd be nice to talk about it today.
Awesome. Thank you both and welcome. Thanks for allocating some time to talk about this topic with us this evening. But before we proceed, I need to provide a disclaimer. So everything that we will be discussing here this evening applies to VCs as a funding asset, specifically in deep tech, climate tech, and biotech spaces, which leaves out other financing assets and other verticals like medtech, for example. So VCs is, however, not the only way to fund your startup, and some other ways might be more fitting for your ventures, which is perfectly fine. I just want to make sure that it is articulated upfront, and that this evening is about how VCs may look into and evaluate hardware tech startups. So with that disclaimer out of the way, so let's jump to the point. So basically, software and hardware building startups generally stand on different terrains. So, and the reason we discuss them in different lights and with different milestones and metrics is because, in essence, they have different inherent risks and they scale differently. But let's dive a layer deeper into that. Max, what would you say are unique challenges that hardware startups face, and how do these translate into de-risking milestones?
Yeah, I think for me, there are like two major differences, and you've already teased them a little bit here. I think my biggest point is that the hardware startups typically require more time and money to enter field tests. So field testing means like getting customer feedback, go to a customer site, try the product, and see what happens. Like when you read about startups, and there are dozens of books out there, and most of them actually are talking more about how to build a software company, and they all recommend something that is either called make and break, or a lean feedback loop, something where you build something very fast, like an MVP, you throw it at your customer, and then you basically see what sticks. You get feedback, you iterate, you might pivot. That is very fitting to the software space. And while this is true in essence still for hardware, it's like super important to go to customers, get feedback, and so on, and iterate fast. This for hardware, this comes just with a much higher complexity, because as you said, hardware companies, they typically come with more technological risk, and then development takes time. You have R&D that takes time. You might need to set up special infrastructure for production. You might need partnerships. Everything takes more time. Everything, and this is related also to technical challenges. Takes more money, right? And so for me, I think it's really different from software companies in a way that it requires a bit more of the traditional kind of project planning on how you set up a strategy to de-risk your companies and kind of try to figure out how to peel off these risk layers from your startup, like an onion, like where you have certain levels of risk, and to convince an investor to give you a certain amount of money, you have to kind of check different tech milestones to take risk away layer by layer. And that just requires a different type of planning, and this kind of software like make and break, let's see what sticks and maybe I pivot approach. It's just hard to do at hardware. And the other point I think would be, as you already mentioned, scalability, right? When you build a software company, it's very easy to reach. It's range and scalability. It's very easy to reach a lot of people with software, a lot of customers. Software usually easy to integrate. With hardware, it's very different, right? You're building a physical product and you need to figure out a way how to distribute that to your customers. You might do unit sales or something. If you do something like this, you need production, then you need volume. So all of this comes with a different type of overhead and complexity.
And then, so I know that translating this to milestones is difficult because there is no one size fits all for like all of the different verticals that live under the branch of deep tech, climate tech, biotech spaces. But like, what would be some examples of early stage milestones that kind of de-risks or increases their chances of getting funding? Like having a pilot, for example, or things like this, number of customers. What would you say?
Yeah, as you say, it's really hard to generalize here, but I would say if there's a general theme, then kind of going to customers, even if it's hard, and even if you build something very, very complex, the sooner you get to customers, kind of build either with them or for them and not away from them, the better it is in general. I think that is like one of the probably also biggest challenges that a lot of scientific founders have, because they are growing up in this kind of academic framework and academic environment, and kind of breaking out there and actually, when you write papers, you always have some applications in mind, but you never actually talk with people. I mean, at least for me, it was never the case. We built nano antennas and like we never actually asked somebody, hey, do you need this? So that is very scientific, right? Getting out there and actually talking to people is very different for a lot of scientific founders. I think that is like an overarching theme.
Yeah, that is true. And Christian, do you have something to add to this, particularly related also to scaling and going to Series A? Because Max was also mostly concerned about the early stages.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. I think, I mean, we need to kind of put it into sort of like a framework, and we have to think about, because when we talk about milestones, right, it's milestones along which dimension. I mean, you can think about the team, how the team is evolving, so if you consider the team, if you consider as well, say, your actual technology, the technology level. So you must have all heard about TRL, and we don't subscribe to an actual TRL, but TRL it's an interesting, gives you a bit of an idea of how advanced your technology is to commercialization. So it could be a milestone, and you'll hear it, and not necessarily attached to a number, because this is a certain level of subjectivity to it, but you can say, hey, moving from a seed round to a Series A, we want to break away from the lab, because don't forget, I mean, these are you're sitting in the lab. I mean, it's usually a team of people that you're doing all this laboratory experiments, and at one point you decide, hey, let's commercialize, and this ties to at which stage you're at and at which stage you're going to raise. Traction is also another, and Max hinted at this. I mean, traction, how do you define traction? What is traction, right? And how much traction do you expect from a pre-seed company that it's, four founders and a pitch deck and a Series A? Like, are you expecting LOIs? Are you expecting offtake agreements? Like what is it? And it's different at each stage. Think about also another sort of milestones will be, IP, and when you think about defensibility. So one big difference between software investments and hardware investments is this issue of IP. I mean, if you're pre-seed and should you have submitted a patent application already by the time you're at Series A? I mean, probably, like, hint, hint, maybe you should have. But should the patent have been granted by then, or if the grant, or if you're spinning off university, should, by the time you're pre-seed and you're raising, should you have already kind of like negotiated this? So that really is along those dimensions. I would also think about into the techno-economics, like how far along is your model? Like how are you really addressing this? Or think about business models and think about the business model. Well, it's not necessarily a milestone. I mean, what I see sometimes founders, it can change. You can at the pre-seed level say, hey, we're targeting this kind of customers, and then at some point later on you're like, oh, well, maybe we're not going to license out, maybe we'll do something else. It's a little bit more difficult to change, to kind of pivot like this in hardware, but you have some room for maneuvering. And then you have other more industry specific ones, I would say, like performance of say, if you're developing a new material, at which point should you demonstrate performance? So like I'll give you a hint. If you demonstrate that, your material performs just the same as what's already used in place, and you're raising a seed round, that's probably a good thing. If you have not demonstrated performance by the time you're Series A, I mean, you're going to have a lot of problem raising, and we can probably touch on all those things later. But I would say like these milestones, you should be considered across this different dimensions. Yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
Just wanted to say, basically, thank you for breaking them down like this. We can organize a discussion moving forward in those brackets and kind of like climb up the ladders as we go. So like Max, you wanted to jump in?
No, yeah, I just wanted to add to what Christian said. So what I actually like, and some startups do this, but I think that's quite a smart approach, is try to like reverse engineer the milestones that you actually need. So for me, the coolest startups are those who actually know where they want to be, where they want to go, like they have an idea where they want to be in like 10 years, vision or whatever. Let's say you need, and then they roughly know, hey, what amount of money do I need to get there? For example, I don't know, a company that wants to build hydrogen, like producing green hydrogen, whatever, like a plant. And they say, hey, this costs us 50 million euros, right? So who's giving you 50 million euros with the money, with the stage you're at right now? Like you're maybe spinning out of a lab, so nobody's giving you 50 million euros. So then you have to think, okay, what would I need to convince an investor to give me 50 million euros? Is this maybe like I have to set up a certain team, certain IP stack, as Christian said? Maybe I need a type of pilot demo plan that kind of shows my process at scale. Let's say that costs 15 million, right? That's already like a lower number. Now the question is, who gives you 15 million for what you have right now? And then I might think, okay, I'm not Elon Musk. I cannot raise like so much money just out of nowhere. Basically, I need to kind of first prove something to investors that they give me 15 million. So what is it? What do I need to get 15 million? Do I maybe, and I go one level lower, and maybe I come out at I don't know, lab demonstration or mini pilot or something like this, right? Where I prove my process first, and that maybe costs 5 million, right? And then the question is again, like, can I get that money now or not? And then you go down, and then maybe at some point you reach I don't know, pre-seed stage, and then you have some milestones defined, whether this is team or tech or IP related. And then you can maybe raise 1 million, and then you kind of go and go for your goal. I think that is always a smart way to kind of think about taking away risk like from yourself, right? To prove to yourself, hey, this might work if I go step by step, and also like reduce risk for your investors. And that is also what I meant initially with this. Hardware requires a bit more of a holistic planning rather than just trying things very, very fast and figuring out what sticks. So that is also, I think, quite different from software basically.
Yeah, that's a very good summary. I like it a lot. So how about we do this in a following way? Given like the sectors, Max, that you have been looking into, also same for you, Chris, and also the stages, pre-seed, seed versus seed, Series A. Let's go through all of these kind of like different parts of the holistic picture and define like what would be kind of the a milestone or a metric for team, for technology level readiness, for traction, et cetera, that made you say, oh yeah, this has potential. I'm going to bring this to my team and we are going to spend time as an investment team on this deal to potentially invest. Sounds good? So let's do it for the team. So Max, I'll start with you because we have this kind of like pre-seed part. So
yeah. Maybe as a teaser, I think that's like a super interesting question that so we're just investors and we also don't have all the answers, right? So and we're trying to get a bit more data on this because pre-seed seed stuff is typically not so data driven, or like investing in early stages is typically not so data driven. So we also try to exactly answer these questions, like what does a startup need to raise a round, like team wise, tech wise, traction wise, and so on. And this is why we've actually conducted a survey together with lots of European VCs, basically trying to get an overview of over 100 investment rounds in hardware deep tech companies and see what did these companies have when they raised pre-seed, seed, Series A, and so on. It's actually based on 0.9 SaaS napkin. They have something like this for SaaS companies. They have a playbook that everybody knows on how to build a SaaS company. And they have also done these surveys, and we kind of mimic this in the hardware space. So we currently have a survey running and already like analyzed a little bit of data. But I think for everybody who really wants to know and who's not just interested in my opinion now, but wants to know basically the opinion of lots of VCs in Europe should have a look at this once we publish the report, because that probably gives you the best overview of what you have to have. So everything else that I'm saying now is based just on what I think is good, not what I know is good. So
hopefully they overlap to a quite
yeah. I mean, I already peeked a little bit into the data, can also say a little bit later about this because there are a few interesting points that I already saw that even surprised me.
nice.
But let's maybe talk about team first.
And since this is also something that Planet A, I mean, like just to show you how important the topic is in the VC circles nowadays, Planet A has published yesterday a hardware building playbook. So on their website, and this is also kind of more founder facing sort of like checklist and different scenarios playthrough, super extensive as well. Chris, when we jump to you, you will have more time to elaborate on it. But yeah, like, so back on in the early stages, when a startup, when you have like a first initial call or a screening call, what about their team made you say, oh yeah, this has potential?
I mean, in like when it comes to early stage, like the fundamentals are not so different actually when you compare software and hardware, right? It's like early stages is very team driven. So you look at the team, you have to have a good communication with the team, a good mode with the team. Obviously, when you look at technical teams, it is much easier for you to quantify whether this team is excellent or not. Like in the software space, it's you can look at their past trajectory and which companies they worked for in the past. For technical teams and especially like scientific teams, typically there's less industry experience, more scientific output, and it's you can quantify how good that output was, so you can see how excellent the team is. So yeah, obviously the better the tech expertise, the better. But I always like when you have, for example, a CEO, like the face of the company, who's not just very, very technical, but who's also a very, very good communicator, because fundraising is a serious topic, especially if you're a hardware company and you need to raise a lot of money. Having somebody who can very clearly communicate where they want to go, how they get there, this is already like super important. I think these two, right? This like tech expertise and then being able to convey this and kind of explain it to me and in simple terms, because I also don't understand everything. Like these two things, like the scientific excellence, like proof of scientific excellence, or let's say technical excellence, doesn't need to be a scientific founder, and like communication of this.
Do you expect to have a commercial co-founder?
Actually, pre-seed stage, and this is also something we checked in the survey. It's actually a lot of pre-seed companies raise good rounds without commercial co-founders, but
Good.
heavily depending on the space where they're working at, obviously.
Mm-hmm. And Chris, what would you say? What makes you think this is an awesome team? This has potential. My team should be investing in this.
Yeah, I mean, for us, a go-to is to look for complementarity in the team. So we do look for a commercial co-founder even very early. I mean, we're always so it really depends. I mean, you want to have the scientific expertise in place, and then you also, depending on what it is. I mean, if you think about a lot of biotech, you have the CSO in place, you also have a CTO, because you also want to have an engineer. So this is when it's because the teams are becoming multidisciplinary, especially if you're building a device. I mean, you have the scientists in the lab who are kind of like doing the basic science, and then at some point you need to scale this, you need to take this out, and then it becomes the game of building the actual kind of thing. And then that becomes an engineering problem. So we depending on each case, we are always ask the question of who will be the person in the founding team that will guide the science, will guide the engineering, and then also the commercial side. So I mean, we're not opposed to not there being a commercial. It really depends on the case by case basis. It's always better if you do have a team. I mean, at least that's our feeling, a team that, because you want to incentivize a commercial person to be in there, and ideally they will be part of the founding team. But this is very early stage when you are talking about the founding team, and of course, as the startup progresses, I mean, your team will grow and you will add more roles, and you will have to think about who will be the finance person, because at some point you will need to raise funds. So the question then becomes, who will lead this part of the growth? And you also need to think about business development. I mean, who's going to be driving sales and so on. So there is a natural evolution in the team, and we always ask the question. Something that we've seen in the past as well is for instance, now a lot of companies, they'll, especially the ones who are doing hardware and software, they'll be like, oh, we're using AI to do this and that. And we ask the question, who is the AI person? So when you're talking to investors, and if you want to demonstrate some sort of expertise or whatever, I mean, you need to make sure that the expertise is there, because we will always ask the question of who will be driving this. And oftentimes having a person that's not very, very incentivized, either they have a good amount of shares in there, they're part of the founding team. I mean, that's what gives us confidence that the person will really go the extra mile in it.
I think you're muted, Anna.
Yep, I was muted. That was a good summary. That's what I said. But then let's move on to, what did you say? Technology readiness level. Max, early stages.
Yeah, maybe first about the technology readiness level, because Christian said they're not looking at it specifically, and so I would actually argue that technology readiness level is not a good metric from an investment point of view, because it's a static metric, and it just tells you like what is the status quo of your technology. It doesn't tell you anything about how fast can I actually climb this TRL ladder. So let's say extreme case, you're at TRL 5, you need 20 years to get to TRL 6, obviously bad. If you're at TRL 3 and you need 2 years to get 8, obviously good. So these are extreme cases, right? But so TRL in itself doesn't tell you much. You have to consider like the trajectory of your development as well.
That's well put. So then let's reframe it to technological developments. So what level of development you're expecting to see in the tech at early stages when people are building hardware?
Yeah, I mean, number one is like technical feasibility. I think is I mean, at least for me, it needs to be checked. Now I can say something again about the survey because I just looked at the data basically just before this call, which is something that actually surprised me. So for me, I always want to see some, feasibility tests, whether this is a lab demonstration or, yeah, usually it's a lab demonstration, right? But I actually saw that from all the pre-seed rounds, and there were quite a lot of pre-seed and seed rounds that we had in our survey. Roughly 20% of these rounds were raised just based on a white paper and without any technical demonstration, which is something that actually surprised me. I didn't expect so many rounds to be raised just based on some sketch basically. So something to keep in mind. But for me, I would always feel more comfortable if I have like a technical demonstration and I know now it's time to scale and kind of like bring it out of the lab. And also looking at the data that we collected, I would say like most of the companies have this in seed stage. So roughly like 50% in seed companies have this kind of, or more than 50% have this type of lab demonstration.
At least a lab demonstration. Okay.
Yeah, at least a lab demonstration, right? Doesn't need to be like lab demonstration doesn't need to be a industrial kind of proof of concept where you go to a customer and kind of test that. That would be next level, right? So for me, it would be like sketch it on paper, test it in the lab, and then test it, in a relevant environment somewhere at your customer's place with a customer together or something like this.
Okay. And how about you, Chris? And especially like seed to Series A.
Yeah, so actually we also in that hardware playbook that just came out, I think it was yesterday, I think, or day before, it just feels like a long time ago. This actually we touch on it, and it was a survey that included like 100 and something VCs and also founders, and it gives you an idea if you want to. So it's a very good point. This ability, to go from it one tier level to the next, and that I think it's really having confidence in the team, and I have seen investments with just white papers. I mean, we have done it, and really what gives us that confidence is really the team. So if you have a very, very strong team and you're not proposing something, I mean, we obviously look at the science, so if you're not proposing something that just is physically impossible, then it just makes sense. But at each stage, what's really is important is at each stage we are expecting a certain level of development. So obviously for a pre-seed round, I mean, you're building your sort of like, let's say, prototype, your MVP. You're also in a pilot phase of things if you're building a chemical process, and then as you proceed, now if you're now in a seed round, you're also expected to be at a higher TRL, meaning that your technology is further the risk. Some things that you do is you can demonstrate, say, a process that's been running continuously for a longer time, or you're producing a material that you are demonstrating that performance meets all the specifications that the industry require. And then right here is usually where I see this, sort of like catch-22 in a lot of startups, because, and I think we should at some point touch on funding too, because you're running all these like pilot studies or proof of concepts, and you're trying to demonstrate that your material performs. How should you fund this, right? So we see a lot of startups coming and they're trying to raise funds to run those studies, but at the same time, I mean, we and and other investors that we know, I don't feel comfortable with that kind of risk, meaning, I don't want to invest money in this for you to demonstrate that the performance, and you can argue about this, the best mechanisms will be to use grants, for instance, or get customers to pay for those studies. But at this point, what you're looking at is to be at a larger scale. You know, if you think of biotech and biotech like fermentation processes, you're moving from, you know, 25 mils, 250 to now you're doing 100 liters. So you're gradually increasing the magnitude, or you're advancing your performance. And by the time that you go into Series A, then you know, you're starting to talk about in the future commercialization, and then it becomes as you proceed from pre-seed to Series A, it's less of a sort of technical laboratory improving and process, and more like scaling it up. Like, let's make this now big. Now the science works, and now let's make it big. Let's have enough material for testing with customers. Let's talk about, you know, the commercial pipeline and so on. So, and this correlates with TRL in a way. I mean, it doesn't tell you whether they'll be able to get there. You know, if you're in a seed round and you're at the right stage, I mean, you kind of hope for the best. You really talk to the team, and that's really at the end what really moves it. You know, an investor, it's eventually you have faith that, you know, this is the right team, they are driven, and they will be able to move it to the next level. But it's really think about, you know, advancing technology always with an eye towards commercialization. I mean, that's something that you must never forget, is that you're doing this. I mean, the science is fun, and the engineering is fun, and I love all of this. But at the end of the day, you need to think about the market, and you need to think the speed that you're advancing through this with an eye towards hit the market like ASAP.
Yeah, exactly. And so that brings us to traction. So and what does this mean, like as a term, specifically when we have like that as a North Star, customers and hitting the ground running. So Max, what does traction of a hardware startup mean to you at early stages? Or what a healthy traction looks like?
Yeah, I mean, very difficult question, or like good question, difficult to generalize. And as Christian also said, I think we are repeating us. This is like super important point. I think for us as investors, you know, the best thing you can do as a startup is get customers that are very excited about your product. And then when we talk to customers, and when I talk to a customer and they tell me, hey, you know, this is making our life much easier, this whatever solution it is exactly what I need, who am I to then say, yeah, I don't know, that's not important enough, right? So this is, I think, super underrated, especially for a lot of founders that come from a scientific context, like kind of, as I said before, breaking out of this academic environment and then going into the industrial world and kind of validating customer interest. And this can come in different forms, right? Early stages, it's always kind of difficult to get going. You know, a lot of startups, they go out, they collect LOIs or something like this. But, you know, you can get an LOI very quickly. It's easy to get a signature. It's like, but to get tangible, like traction and customers that are involved in like working with you on something, whether this is a pilot project, and pilot project doesn't need to be, you know, a large scale thing. It can be like a small a co-design of a component or something, of I don't know, a laser or a robotic system, whatever. So, but getting to customers very quickly and kind of setting these projects up. If you get paid, great. If not, also like not a problem. You want to collect feedback at these early stages. I think, yeah, that is, if you as a startup, if you can tell me, hey, call this number. This is a guy from, I don't know, Bosch. They want to integrate our product into their new hairdryer, and I talk to this guy, you know, that obviously helps, right?
Okay, good. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, of course. I mean, traction, what it just really demonstrated that the market's interested in what you're doing. So, and that's really like at the end of the day, I mean, that almost trumps anything else, I would say. Maybe not always, but you know, if you come over and you say, hey, I have an offtake agreement, I have a PO sign, and it's 10 million for the next 2 years. I mean, you're kind of gold. And this is something that, you know, this sort of I mean, you've seen this a lot in biotech, where governments do this, and then this could be a topic for another session on that in climate, especially, you know, this funding gap that you have in hardware. But really, the level of traction that you expect at each stage of the company, of course, will be different. I mean, if you're a pre-seed founder, I mean, we're not expecting commercial traction. Like, you probably don't have much, you don't have anything, and that's okay. I mean, that's really, you know, if you just launched and you are like, you know, you as a founder, I mean, you're building relationships with people in the space as well. So you don't really know the incumbents. I mean, you're not going to do pilot studies. You probably don't know the people yet, or you don't have enough you don't have enough product for them to test. So it really depends. So at a pre-seed, that's probably the least expectations that you know we kind of have on that. I mean, you need to have an idea on who the big players are, and already start talking to them. I mean, it's don't forget. I mean, it's having a good idea and a great product, and it's not enough. You need to actually get the market excited about it. You need to build those relationships, and then once you move from pre-seed and then you get your funding and everything's been amazing, and now you're at the seed stage. I mean, Max hinted on it, and you get, you know, LOIs. That's the kind of, I mean, LOIs are nice, but it's very easy to sign a piece of paper. It's like, you know, but it does, at least the LOI shows that you have some sort of relationship with some potential customers. And usually at this stage, we would be like, hey, can we talk to this person? You know, you know, you come to me and you say, hey, we're racing and we have LOIs from these 5 companies. We'll be like, hey, can we talk to maybe one of them? And then we'll try to understand what moved them. So it's a bit of I mean, it's an interesting, it's not the only way you can demonstrate that you know, potential customer, but it's an interesting way to show. I mean, ideally would be, say, if you sign a joint development agreement. I mean, this is something that's already a little bit more solid. I mean, and it also says that someone is very serious about this. And it also incentive, it's something on from the, you know, it's should incentivize the founder to say, hey, you know, to reach out and find partners and find people that will want to develop with them, because it sends a signaling to an investor and say, hey, there's somebody else out there who actually has a lot of faith in this, and they will, the founder will not be alone in that journey. So you're really leveraging the people around you. And finally, you have all of this, everything's great, and then you kind of say, hey, I'm ready to go into Series A now. And the biggest, maybe the most controversial statement would be like, oh, commercial revenue at this point. So some funds are very strict about it. Of course, it helps you, but by the time you hit Series A, we expect to have some sort of commercial validation at this point. I mean, recurring revenue maybe, but paid pilots. I mean, you should have some revenue, but there should be some indication that you are moving towards commercializing, that people are interested. If you already have, you know, a signed, you know, contract, and I mean, it's really massive. I mean, it almost trumps a lot of things behind it. Like, it will definitely take you in front of an investment committee for sure if you say, hey, I mean, it will, like I mean, also personal experience. Somebody comes to me and they say, well, we already have the signed contract, you know, 10 million. Like I said, immediately I go, wow, okay, what's happening here? And it's I mean, we understand from founders it's not easy to get there, but that's also why we're like, wow, okay, the market is speaking and the market is saying we're interested in this, and then we kind of need to form the we'll need to understand, okay, is this sustainable? Is this like an indication? I mean, again, it's signaling that there's interest, and then the next question will be like, will it be sustained in time? But at least it's something that will really make the road racing at Series A much easier. Yeah.
Right. That's
Maybe
an awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
maybe one point to add also, because Christian reminded me of this. For pre-seed stage, I think when we talk about traction, it's not just about showing demand, but as you're a super young startup and you have maybe not much idea about industry, you go in, you build relationships, and you kind of develop a commercial thinking, which is super important. Like, so getting to traction, getting to like customers, it's not just validating demand, but it also gives you the chance to kind of think about things on how to actually sell my product, how to sell, how to scale, like this whole like developing this commercial mindset, and then thinking about everything that is related to sales and commercial stuff. It's not just about making money, but actually how do I bring this to the customer? How can I scale this? Like, how would I actually do? Like, how would I make money? What am I actually selling? Am I selling the hydrogen that comes out of my plant, or am I selling the tech that produces the hydrogen, and these kind of things? So it's like, and I think this is like then shaping the trajectory of your company later on. So yeah, this is also why it's super important to kind of get out there and like talk to people, because everything you're doing kind of will change based on that.
So one can say that interviews with customers will then classify as a early stage traction.
Yeah, it's actually also a point that we kind of go through in the survey, and something that basically all pre-seed companies that raised a round have to some extent. Yeah.
Right. And then we also mentioned then business model, unit economics, and so on, but this then becomes way too granular for discussion. And looking into the time, I would actually like to. I had some questions also prepared that go kind of into more later stages. So, for example, how would you, if you both can summarize, like pick a perfect example? Now we have discussed the theme, the tech, the traction and customers. So what would be a healthy looking startup at different stages? Max.
Starting with pre-seed?
Yeah.
I mean, what means a healthy looking startup, right? At pre-seed, like, is this pre-round? Is this post-round? I mean, if there's a startup that raised
Pre-round.
right? So, I mean, healthy looking from team perspective would be
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you have your team is set, right? You have like everybody has their shares, everybody is nicely incentivized, nobody's leaving the team, and nobody's like kind of trying to join the team from the outside. You have maybe started to kind of figure out all the IP stuff and kind of have a solution in place for that, right? You're going to customers, you speak with them, you have a tech demo, and or you know that your stuff works, or you have a track record that kind of proves to us that you can make it work. So for pre-seed, right, this then sounds pretty good.
Good. Then seed.
Should I give to Christian, or?
Yeah, we give it to Christian.
Yeah, I mean, there's not that much of a dramatic difference, but at this point, you're already hiring people. I mean, you know, maybe you're no longer only the founding team. You also bring employees. I mean, you need hands in the lab, people that will be and will be developing the technology, and then and you have to think very carefully about talent and recruiting people, depending on also the space. You need to start thinking about commercial. You need to start thinking about how you will build a commercial strategy in the future. I mean, you know, if you think about food tech, for instance, I mean, it's you really need to start talking to, like, if you're an ingredients company about doing ingredients houses, and you need to start very early, because you need to keep in mind a lot of these conversations, they take time. It takes a long time for you to move a potential customer into buying your product, whatever it is. I mean, if you know, you just say, it depends on the sector. If you're in the construction sector, I mean, that's even it takes even longer. I mean, decisions are not made overnight. So you need to start thinking about who you have in the team. And think about you know, all potential, basically all the hires, and most of, I mean, at this point, what I see more commonly is just hiring people in the lab, really. And you might have someone in business development, really depending where you're at, but your team is still pretty lean. Because also you don't have that much, I mean, your runway is 24 months usually at this point, so you cannot hire like, 50 people. So, but it's very crucial really to assemble the right team, and you don't want to hire the wrong people and then find yourself, at this stage. But I think at the point where you're hitting seed, you're starting to grow.
But that's like a super, as you said, like pre-seed and seed, they're very close to each other. But at the same, it's like a very exciting phase when you start hiring people, because it usually takes time to figure out whether this is good or bad, what you've done here, right? Like hiring is like, it's actually very exciting to see then startups hiring people and the kind of talent they can attract. It tells you a lot about the founders, like how good are they attracting talent and kind of pitching their stuff and what do they have to offer and so on. At the same time, there's always a little bit of a delay, like, until you figure out, hey, this is actually a cool team, this works like a good, machine, or it doesn't.
And moving from the team to the tech, Chris, what is a healthy metric for seed stage, pardon, on tech development? What do you kind of like to see? What really is like, oh yeah, this is the hot shit? And also the same for the business side.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends what you're doing, but for me, I've already said it before, and like Kiko's performance, it's like you need to demonstrate that if you're producing I mean, if it's a new material, or say a new way of manufacturing something else, really depending on what it is, you want to demonstrate that it really is a drop-in replacement, for instance. We like those, but we can talk about that some other time. But you really want to demonstrate that the purity of what you're manufacturing, say if depending what you're making, that it can be used by potential customers, that's not going to be a challenge, and that's not straightforward, but it's a very important metric. If you're producing a new construction material, you want to demonstrate at this point that performance wise it competes with say ordinary Portland cement, that's out there. Or if you're making a new composite, you want to demonstrate that it actually performs to standards. And then this is when you're engaging with potential customers who will run the pilots with you. So at this point, it's just it's check it, like it's a big check for us, like to look at that.
And then Series A.
And for Series A, that it's all about that you can grow, that you can scale this up, really. And that depending on what model you're using, if you're going to be building a plant that at this point you're already thinking about the future and about also who is going to scale this, in the team wise, really, and whether, I mean, you have to show it that it will be scalable. So you go in small steps. You go from you have the pilot, and you go to demo and so on. So it becomes, so as you've noticed, I mean, it becomes a game of simply scaling at this point. The closer you get to Series A and then Series B, it's about breaking out of the lab. We see a lot of like decentralized solutions. That's something that's very common now. That's another model that people are moving because it's CapEx light. So at this point, by the time you're in Series A, you need to have that prototype in place where it's it's already, you're out of the lab, literally physically out of the lab, and it works. Or you're moving towards a bigger plant if you're going that route.
What's a good number? Give a number. So how many paid pilots do you want to see at Series A?
I mean, at this point, we don't. I mean, this is the thing, when we look at it like holistically, like we look at the whole thing. So it really depends. I mean, we don't have at least apply A, we don't have like a set thing where we say, hey, this is, we expect this. I mean, commercial traction is a big one. That is like a big one. And if the commercial traction is there, I mean, the technology, it means the technology is already there as well. So I mean,
Fair.
generally speaking. So we don't have a metric where we say, hey, we expect 20 pilots at this point. Like, if you can demonstrate the performance of the material, and then you can hint that that there is commercial interest for us, we're set, and this is what we expect from the Series A.
Right, exactly. Because I mean, when you translate this to SaaS, it's like 1 million ARR, and that can mean like completely different things for hardware building startup. That's why I thought that for the audience, it would be good to know like what your ideal kind of deal that lands on your desk looks like in terms of some metrics. But I agree, it's hard to generate.
I'll give you an example, for instance, in fermentation, like you're expecting that you've run like a run of like 1,000-liter run. You know, you're looking at how much output you have at that moment. Why? Because the pilots and that you will be able to run depends on how much you're producing at that point in time. So if you're not producing enough material for testing, then you know, you're not at the right stage. At least that's kind of how we see it. But you in biotech, it's very easy to, especially in fermentation, you can give a number to it, because you can look at the bioreactor size. You can, I mean, you can also think about like your plant, you know, like output as well. Like if you want to assign some hard metrics to it, but we don't have hard metrics on our end. But we are expecting, you know, we look at it holistically.
25.
Every case is just too different, right? You cannot compare. Like also there are deep tech cases they have even less commercial traction at Series A stage. I mean, look at ESA Aerospace. They raised 100 whatever million Series C round last year. They have 0 rocket launches. I mean, they do have offtake agreements or something comparable, right? But they have not launched a rocket yet. So it's like really depends on what you're looking at.
But also like at least in biotech, I mean, in especially industrial biotech, you kind of have to be careful with that, because we're now seeing, especially in precision fermentation, which probably everyone is here before. I mean, you have now all these giants that are essentially giant biotech companies, and they're raising Series B with no commercial traction. So it's a little bit, and there was a lot of hype about all these companies, and investors threw money at this. And then was that a good idea? You know, like, well, it's not clear right now. Not gonna say any names, but it's very easy to figure out why, you know, what is that. So the question is like, you know, with the time you go to Series B, like, you know, by the time you're at Series B, the bottom line is like it's too late to start thinking about commercial strategy. I mean, that needs to already be there for you know, for a while, at least, you know, in maybe not in maybe so deep tech, but really depends.
Yeah, I mean, Lilium ran into similar issues, right? And then they had to IPO, which kind of lower their valuation significantly because it was too early. But yeah, so in any case, I would with this conclude the kind of moderated discussion between the three of us right now and open it to questions. Guys, the Menti is almost empty. So let's just go to menti.com and I will share my screen again. This one. Yeah, so we have 2 questions. You did well. We covered everything. So, no, okay, let's start with this one because Chris, you also mentioned that this would have been something that you wanted to discuss anyways. So high capital requirement affects valuations, equity dilution for deep tech and hardware startups. How do typical round sizes look like? What are the key milestones per round? Actually, then let's start with this with pre-seed. Max.
Yeah, I think the typical pre-seed round that we see has a dilution of around 20%. Like, let's say give a range 15 to 25% maybe, but I think most is happening within 20%. I would say that for seed it's very similar in terms of dilution, and then you can calculate it based on like what you need. We see that companies that need more money, let's say you are a very early stage company, whether it's pre-seed or seed, and you need to raise 5 million because it's really capex heavy, then the valuation is going up accordingly, even if you maybe have less traction than comparable companies, because the investors know that it's capex heavy, and everybody wants you to not dilute too much. So investors are aware if it's a capex heavy case, valuation will go up. So yeah, and then it's typically around 20% dilution for the early stages.
And then, Chris?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. I mean, it really depends. I mean, I think at least in sort of like biotech, I mean, we see a lot of round sizes between, I mean, 250 to like 1.5, 2 million. So it's you know it's not like it really depends. It really depends. I mean, valuations, I don't know, it can be 2 to 4 to 5, and so, you know, and then when you go to seed round, I would say maybe between 2 and 6 million. That's the typical that we see. I mean, it really depends on the company. And again, also we see the same thing. I mean, the dilution about 20. And then of course, by the time you're Series A, it can be all the way from 10 to 30 million. So it really, you know, it's been going down lately. So it's kind of like correcting itself, but that's really what we see.
Yep. Right. I'm gonna press enter to mark it
And
answered.
stay tuned for our napkin survey, because this is going to be one of the key points there as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is also something that you can throw statistics at it.
Yeah.
So finding out if our product can be legally commercialized can be a complicated legal question. At what stage can this become a make or break funding rounds?
Can you? I didn't see.
Defensibility around tech.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I'm thinking about it.
Was this your question, Sid?
Yes, the character count was limited, so I could clarify
Okay.
if that's needed.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's specifically about patents. So we're usually not the only ones working on a promising technology, and there can be competitors who've made broad patents. And to find out if we can still commercialize, this takes time, and yeah, we would need a law firm and some time and money.
Maybe
So yeah.
one thing for like very early stage stuff. I know, and it, again, depends like heavily on your case. But like patents are a two-sided sword, sort of, you know, because a patent is always only as so good until somebody finds a way to kind of circumvent it. So it's great in the beginning, and then somebody finds a loophole, and then it's not so great anymore. So, and obviously you don't know that in the beginning, and every lawyer is going to tell you, yeah, I'm writing this very well, and then you think it's an awesome patent. I think like in pre-seed stage, right? If we invest in a company, what I find much more exciting is I'm betting on founders being able to continuously innovate and develop new stuff based on their foundation. So I wouldn't say we're ever investing in a company because they have an awesome patent. Like a patent is kind of a proof of your, you know, of your technical output, and it kind of shows it, and it's good to have them, and it's certainly not bad. But I think what's much more important is that you kind of have the team to build on this and be able to kind of innovate continuously. There are areas where you know, foundation patents are super important, and there are areas where they are maybe a bit less important. But just, you know, as a general remark, I think what's much more important is that you can kind of innovate in the future. And so for us, like doing a legal analysis of patents is just, you know, out of scope in this super early stage. So wouldn't worry about this, at least in pre-seed stage.
Also, I mean, you can write a patent about everything and just kind of submit it. If you like, it doesn't have to be, it's not a feasibility proof. It's literally like a text. People have been patented weird stuff. You can just go and look it up at Google Patents. But in any case, I mean, like, are you infringing a patent, Sid? Is this where your question was from? Or not clear?
No, certainly not intentionally. But the question is about patents of competitors. Uh, if yeah, not of course we have a patent portfolio and an atmosphere to innovate, but competitors will try to patent and keep us out of the competition.
Yeah, I think I mean the biggest patent disputes you see them all in biotech. So if you look into all those cases, everyone, and it's like what Anna said. I mean, you can literally patent anything and everything under the sun. So you wanna. I mean, I'm not a patent attorney. I mean, you do want to make sure that you have freedom to operate. That's like one thing that you want to do. But at the stage in which these companies are at, I mean, you kind of just spun out of the university. So you acquire exclusive license from the university. So you're all set on that front. But if not, you first submit the patent application. And I mean, I have seen this, and then you submit the patent application, patent hasn't been granted, you're like a seed company, and then your patent application comes back, the patent, the person's looking into the patent, they do the patent search, and then they find 20 different instances in which there's no novelty, because you actually, if you look at the patent applications, you'll see it attached to it at the end. And then it kind of becomes a game so at this point, right? I mean, as an investor, it's your seed round, you submitted a patent, the patent hasn't been granted. I mean, you're not expecting the patent to be granted at this point, because it takes a long time, and actually a lot of founders don't want to disclose right away what exactly they're doing, so there is no rush to kind of like go in there and give all the data and have that patent. You have like 18 months from the time that you submit the patent application. What matters is that date up until it finally gets reviewed, and in the meantime you can get the people that's looking into it to give you that report. And it's super interesting, because then it comes back with this, as I said, with this list, and then you're like, oh no, like it's like infringing on like 20 different patents. And the thing is, then you go back and you have to withdraw. So this is when all the patent attorneys have a field day. It's so much fun because then it becomes a game of how you word it and how you start. If your patent is like super broad, then you're going to infringe on everything. And then you start kind of like narrowing it down, and that's why it's important. And it's something that we look at as part of. I mean, we do a legal DD at the point. I mean, we give a term sheet, and then we at the same time we're doing a legal DD where we looked into this sort of things. You want to have also a good legal team from the point of view of a startup, because you want to defend your IP, and it becomes really how you start writing this. I mean, I've seen this. You can take that patent application and that search, and you can discuss it with the lawyers and say, hey, is this something that realistically we can address? And then you rephrase the patent, you narrow it down, you change different things, you change I don't know, the materials, and then don't forget that your strategy is you want a broad patent, and then you kind of start narrowing down until at some point it kind of fits in there, and then you can patent anything.
But I think like just bottom line, freedom to operate is great, but we're not like overly obsessing, especially at early stages. We're not obsessing over competitive patents, especially because Christian said, like, you never know what they're cooking in their kitchen, like what is not patented yet. So if we were like afraid of this, then we can just stop investing.
Yeah, it becomes a bigger issue like the later stage that you go, because then you start discussing about your IP strategy, and then as you start growing and going into different areas, then you will start to go into other territories, and markets and approaches, and then you might start to be more concerned. So more concerned about this kind of like more later stage that you're at.
This is because like your IP stack can be sold. So this when during the acquisition, this is also something that really drives the price up. I will move on.
Thank you.
So
Thank you very
it was
much.
like elaborate IP discussion here. We can consider like bringing a set of lawyers to some of the next Clueless About sessions. So hiring. So when it comes to hiring at an early stage company, which skill set and mentality should ideal candidates bring to the table?
Yeah, I mean, that's like super interesting topic, and so I think like probably the first thing that comes to mind is that when you hire people, you're a startup, the salary you can offer is obviously limited. You might offer like a, ESOP or VSOP package or something like this. So you actually want people that are super, super driven and can highly align with where you want to go and where you want to be as a team. You have a small team, right? So everybody is working closely with everybody, like especially at early stages. So you want people that are really highly driven and motivated, and they are like ready to kind of like they're going for a lower salary just to work on your startup, right? This is like if you get there and you have people that want to spend their whole life basically working with you on your life project for a lower salary than what they could earn somewhere else. If they are that driven, like this is a very good start, right? And then obviously skill set super different depending on the role, depending on what kind of thing you're building. If you're a hardware tech company, like the most people that we see, they I think Christian mentioned it also earlier, like very technical hires, right? You might hire some people with a like business development background, but most of the hires are technical most of the time, I would say.
Nice. I would also add a few things here, like chiming in as a moderator, like breaking all the rules tonight. But basically, I mean, culture is incredibly important, and like what kind of culture you want to build in the team will start with these first hires. And this is because, as we say in Germany, the fish stinks from its head. So it also kind of goes in the positive direction. And so ultimately, I think you will need jacks of all trades, especially in engineering heavy, hardware heavy startups, because every headcount counts. And this usually means that you will look into into a team that has as diverse as background as possible, to have all of the different points of view, because you never know where the new ideas and innovation may come from. Chris, you can now add. I'm finished with my monologue.
No, that's exactly it. And the way you hire people, of course, will change and depending on which stage you're at. I mean, definitely the kind of people that you hire when you're when you're seed, it's going to be different from Series A. And as you grow, it changes. And the other thing to point out is for founders to think about, it's also the hiring. You don't have to do it alone. What that means is that if you've already raised VC funds, VCs nowadays, there's this platform role that a lot of larger VCs have, and they can assess you on this sort of questions. They have people in there that is really their role. So you're not alone. That's also why you want to raise VC money as well, because they will be with you in this whole journey. So you're not alone. That's the point.
Also, we are not alone. Our head of platform is right there. Hi, Lena. But indeed, so this is also something that we do in First Momentum and have a great track record at doing so. But also, like at Planet A, they're also famous for meeting their founders there. Who left? My screen changed. So yeah, like let's move on. I hope that the answer was kind of satisfactory. But I think you should also kind of ask other founders as well for this particular one. Deep tech hardware companies generally have long sales cycles. Based on your experience, what's the advice you would give to startups to shorten the cycle? Super, super important one.
And super difficult.
Okay, then Chris.
I mean, all I can say is start early. I mean, it's very difficult to change how the incumbents who already operate, So the best you can do is really start early, all these conversations.
I mean, the problem is that a lot of times it's something, it's an external dependency, right? You depend on the speed in the organization that you want to sell to. Again, we are repeating us, very much depends on the case, but you can't really change internal processes at your customer's company. So,
Unless you change the first customers. So
Yes,
like go to
yes.
those that are very easy to reach and have shorter cycles. For example, other startups that might benefit from your solution, or somebody who can already have something small that you're building. If you're building something at large scale, like implementation, somebody that doesn't need like 100 leaders of whatever firms you have, but like rather like a leader will
Or
do.
find customers that can act as a multiplier that might be difficult to get in at first, but then they allow you to get to other customers more quickly afterwards.
So flywheels, yeah.
Yeah,
Did we answer it? Yeah. Yeah, we did.
a little bit.
A little bit. In terms of risks, what are the most important things to consider?
In the duck space, I give this to Christian.
I actually don't look into the dark space, so I don't know. I think it's, yeah, I mean, you know, you can have technology risk, you can also market risk. So I don't know how to answer this question. It's very broad. No.
Okay, that's very risky. Like red flags everywhere. No, just
I think like the risk layers we typically look at, and again, super broad. Like there's kind of a team risk, there's kind of technology risk, there's kind of a market risk, kind of figuring out is there a market pull, is there demand, but also like how difficult is it to access that market? How to come back to the question before, like how fast are these customers adopting stuff? Like there's kind of this market and go-to-market risk and how scalable it is. So just to give you like a few bullet words, basically.
and fundraising risk
And
as well.
fundraising, it's true.
That is basically the risk of like you failing to raise the next round because you haven't achieved the milestones that the other investors would deem you worthy of raising that next round. Should we go into more detail, or like, are you happy with the answer? I'm happy with the answer though. We can always elaborate in the next sessions. Let's speed it up. I'm already getting hungry. So yeah, we actually answered everything. So this was the first question that we started with. So with that, I had a last question. And so this one is, stop sharing. So this one was, what is the one key takeaway or piece of advice for hardware building, deep tech and research spin-off founders that you two have?
So
like if you can tell one thing.
yeah, I mean, for spin-off founders, for me, early stage, you come out of university, it's this, what I said before, break out of your academic environment and kind of build something useful that is needed by customers. So you have to actually go to them and talk to them and kind of interact with customers in whatever way this is in your stage, but do it.
And you, Chris?
For me, it's be market focused. So no matter what you're doing, always think from outside the organization, what is the problem that they need to be solved and for which you're providing a solution. So always be market focused.
All right, awesome. And there you have it. So this was our session on Clueless about metrics and milestones for hardware startups. Again, you can always sign up for becoming a member at the Clueless No More network, where we will share the recording of this session as well as the next events. And with that, have a great evening and I'll talk to you soon. Ciao.